You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He's David Eckert from the Clarion Ledger. He's been out at practice and all of that stuff. And we're going to talk about Monday's practice in a little bit because as this show debuts, they'll be currently practicing tonight. So this will be about Monday's practice as well. But the SEC kind of gave us some manna from heaven a little bit with the thought that they could have mandatory injury reports in college football. And as secretive as schools are about injuries these days, I don't care if it's not going to be 100% accurate because it's not going to be 100% accurate, but anything is better than what they have now.
Yeah. I think that report came from John Talty at CBS. Who's usually,
I think so.
Yeah, pretty reliable. I haven't done any reporting there, but you assume if John's reporting it that it's accurate. But yeah, I think that's a positive thing. Just because just getting some regulation into the system with that is great. And I think it de-incentivizes coaching staffs to be protective and like closed off because, look, it is a competitive disadvantage for your opponent to go into week 6, 7, 8, knowing who is not available. And, we're not stupid. We know that. But, if you level the playing field, you make sure that everybody's doing the same thing. I think, maybe in addition to the report that you're already going to get, you might see some coaches being a little bit more forthright about that type of thing. So that I think there's going to be a reaction to that as well, which I think will help.
What do you think the reaction to that? How do you think that's going to go around college football? Should it happen? The SEC regulates that has to happen. What do you think the answer across the country will be?
Well, look, I think, again, everybody has their personal opinions on gambling and how that interacts with collegiate sports. To me, that's what this is for. It's, hey, lots and lots and lots of money is being risked every weekend on these games, and we don't have reliable reporting of who and who isn't going to be out there like we do in the NFL and have had forever. So that to me has to be the motivation for doing it. But yeah, I just think, again, I'm a reporter, right? More transparency is always what I'm in favor of. So if they're gonna tell me who's hurt instead of making me look around at practice with binoculars and figure it out that way, that's great. So I'm all for that.
Now, do you think it will change? Let's see. I'm gonna try and massage this a little bit. Let's say a player is not necessarily injured, but he might be making an NIL play during the week, and it's determined that he may or may not play on Saturday. Do you think this would discourage that type of thing?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about it. I don't know. I don't know if they just stick an injury designation on there. Just, I don't know. I'm not sure how because the Big Ten had this last year. I assume there were situations, maybe not that specific one that you're referencing, where, a player had some off the field stuff impacting whether or not he was going to play. I'll have to look and see how they documented that on these reports. But that's going to be something they're going to have to figure out.
All right, so let's turn the page into Monday's practice. You got to see them. The pads finally went on. We talked to Zach Mareth last night and got his perspective on it. But apparently they started with an Oklahoma drill, which is kind of like red meat for people whenever the pads go on. What did you notice from practice last night?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, and I was kind of scratching my brain. It feels like it's early for the pads to be on for them. I mean, that was practice 3. So I'm trying to remember when they did that last year, but especially, and Lane actually talked about this with us on Monday, like given their general approach that is very anti-contact, more mental reps. I thought that was interesting that they had the pads on, but yeah, I don't know. Again, like we see so, and I know I say this every time I come on, and I apologize, but we see so little that it's like, I'm pulling out. I don't know what to say because it's like I don't see enough of a sample to say, all right, Ulysses Bentley looks awesome. He looks bigger, right? We know he put on some weight, but it's just making takeaways about players is really tough. I will say we did see a little bit of a team period, and the offensive line, the first offensive line unit had Diego Pounds involved, which was not the case last week. So that's a new development. And what was noteworthy to me was we've seen 2 team periods so far, and the center for both of them has been Jaquan Scott, which and Ole Miss had a center that was pretty reliable, I thought, in Caleb Warren. So I thought that was interesting. But Kiffin kind of said, "Look, we see him as both, so we'll see where he lands."
An interesting thing, and I think it was your question from Monday's press conference, where I think you asked about the backup quarterbacks.
That was Katz, but
Yes.
that was it was he did not name a backup quarterback. He was given the opportunity to do so, and he didn't do it. So
I built a whole segment on tomorrow's show based around that question and that answer, and he said next to nothing. Yeah. And I thought that was some pretty good job, because I do think that Lane Kiffin saying nothing means that he's playing coy, and Lane Kiffin being frank and forthright means that he's just being real. If he's not saying something, there's a reason for it. And that is probably because he is trying to keep these guys here through 2 more transfer portal cycles.
Yeah, I think that's a strong interpretation of what happened there. And look, I mean, I had a conversation with Jackson Dart last week, and he used the word competition to describe what's happening there. So something else that I thought was interesting, and this was a whole different conversation. I'm drawing a bridge between them by myself. Lane did not do this with his words, but Lane had mentioned that he thinks the new in-helmet communication system, where the offensive coordinator and the coach can talk to the quarterback up until 15 seconds on the play clock. He thinks that that's going to create an ecosystem where coaches are going to be more likely to play younger quarterbacks because they can just tell them what to do. So I wonder how that is influencing what we're talking about at the backup quarterback position, because I mean, Austin Simmons should still be in high school. So,
yes.
He would benefit, I imagine, from that guidance in his ear.
I did a show this week to where we talked about Lane calling that a cheat code and everything. And I tried to paint a picture on the podcast of how that might look, because Ole Miss snaps the ball at about average of 21 seconds, which means that mic is going to be open the entire time. And you have a 3rd-year starting quarterback for Lane Kiffin in Jackson Dart. So he comes up to the line of scrimmage. The defense is trying to disguise coverages, doing all of this stuff to make it work. You've got Charlie Weiss upstairs looking down on it. It's like, hey, Trey Harris got one-on-one.
For sure.
That's all he has to do. And that's a major advantage for the offense, because I think Lane is worried that maybe defensively they'll be able to neutralize a little bit about this. He talked about that in the press conference, but I do think it's a situation like a muddy field is advantage offense whenever you're being proactive as opposed to being reactive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's kind of been 2 modifications to the game this offseason that I think impact Ole Miss disproportionately because of how fast they go. That's one of them. The other is the iPads, which Lane hates. Like, he made it very clear that he is not in favor of that, because he feels like it's easier for defenses to understand what they're doing from the sideline when they can see the full picture on their iPad. So there's a couple things there that Ole Miss is going to have to adapt to. It have to adapt its very specific system to. Obviously, Lane Kiffin has shown himself to be a competent adapter, to say the least. So, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you have confidence in his ability to do that. But two things to watch for sure.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we will continue to talk fall camp with David Eckert of the Clarion Ledger. So stick around for that. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games. And the sports just stop sportsing the way we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep these sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. Maybe I can bet on the Ole Miss Rebels over-under on wins, which currently sit at 9.5. Or maybe I'm interested in Ole Miss being minus 122 to make the college football playoff. Or perhaps I want to get a little bit more granular and bet on Jackson Dart at plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, all streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also, if you want a guide for the Locked On streaming channels, download the Zeam app on your phone, Zeam. If you do that, you can see exactly what is coming up on Locked On. So, David, Monday in practice and everything's going, and you talked about, hey, this is only their third practice, but I think Lane probably got away with that because at one of the walkthroughs, they probably did that in the helmets or the shoulder pads to get through the acclimation type stuff. That's how I think they got through it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but look, Lane, we talked about this. Lane is not going to add strenuous stuff to their plate. It's honestly, it's really interesting, and it's been interesting to hear him talk about it too, because clearly his opinion has been changed on this stuff. Right? Because he's talking about 2 days and how he used to do all this stuff. And now it's just like, just don't get hurt, like, please don't get hurt. So, it's, I don't know exactly what they did the walkthroughs. They don't let us into those, but,
I can tell you what they did the walkthroughs. I've filmed probably 150 of those.
They walked through, Steven.
They line up and they stand and they look around, and then the coach goes around and basically, what do you do here? What do you do here? Right. Yeah, that's all it is. It's really simple.
Yeah. I don't know, but maybe they squeezed a little bit of football in there, Steven. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Highly illegal. But yeah.
Well, not today. I mean, not really? During camp. Yeah, I mean, a walkthrough or a 2-a-day practice is the same thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
but yeah,
whenever they start classes, that's a different story.
I see. Okay. But yeah, an interesting approach, I think, for them overall.
Yeah, tomorrow's show, I also did thing on Lane's NFL model for training camp. And I think this is real, and this is a sign of what Lane Kiffin thinks this team can be. I think he is completely doing this to try and make it to where the team is fresher for the playoffs than normal, because it's like he says, you don't start a marathon by the first day going out and running 20 miles.
Yeah.
It's just ramp it up, because he wants by the Georgia game, that's when he wants this team peaking. If this team's peaking at Furman, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because the schedule does kind of let them do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even Kentucky at home to start the SEC play, like you'd argue that's probably one of their 2 or 3 easier SEC games with respect to the Wildcats. But yeah, it's I think you could be very well be right. I don't think he would say that, yes, but yeah, I think that's an astute observation, because look, I mean, I think that's something that college football is going to have to reckon with in general. The extra games that these kids are going to have to play. You know, maybe that bye that you get, if you're a conference winner, might alleviate some of that. But I mean, there's going to be teams that play 16 games, right? So yeah, that's a lot.
And what better than the NFL to get ready for a 16 game season?
Yeah. I don't know. I that's something, again, like, stuff is constantly changing. We're talking about this all the time. I'm curious to see how that evolves. You know, whether conference title games end up being something that get, you know, brought into question, or
they should. There's no such thing as an AFC East championship game.
Yeah. That's true. But I don't know. We'll see. It doesn't seem like that's really top of mind, but maybe once we get some injury statistics and just a better feel for how this is impacting the kids' bodies, maybe we'll start to hear some questions about that.
Well, we'll tell you how this is going to go, just to let you know, just so whenever you go, hey, Steve was right. Against Furman, Ole Miss is going to beat Furman 31-10, and it's going to be a fairly sloppy game. And everybody's going to immediately say it's because they didn't do 2 a day, and all of that is going to come out, and it's going to get better and better and better. And they're going, when it does what it's supposed to do, everybody's going to be fine. But there is going to be a loud minority of the fan base at the early part of the season, is my prediction.
Interesting. I don't know. I think the bar for bad might be a little bit higher than that. Like, I don't know, Steven. I think there's going to be a lot more than they're just not quite ready for this than that needs to happen for the score against Furman to only be 31-10. With all respect to the Paladins, you know, I love me some FCS football, but I think the bottom end of the range of outcomes is probably even more ugly than that.
Oh, yeah. I think the line is like 45 points or something like that as it sits right now. And I believe it or not, I've started reaching out to try and find people, because I do a crossover show every Thursday. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need to find somebody to talk about Furman. So I'm like burning up Twitter to try and find somebody to talk about Furman.
Let me know if you find someone, because every year I like power rank the quarterbacks on Ole Miss's schedule. People like to read that, and I was trying to find somebody who could tell me who's going to start at quarterback for Furman, and I couldn't do it.
Joe DeLeon.
Okay, yeah, but it was a struggle. I think that's who I landed on. But I ended up on some, like, I mean, it wasn't Rivals or On 3 or 2. It was like some kind of independent message board with like 5 posts a week trying to figure out.
I found out from Michael Borky, by the way, who is a closet Furman fan from his childhood.
Really?
Yes. He is a Furman guy that if you want some information, he could probably point you in the right direction. but he said they run a version of the Service Academy offense.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Just
so
the weirder the better with these FCS games. I mean,
yeah, and he also said, this is a playoff level FCS team, so it's not North Dakota State coming into town, but it's not far below that.
Yeah, they have. I mean, look, that's a respectable athletic department. They do some things in basketball every year. They're usually pretty good at football. I mean, for the size of the university, I mean, I think they do pretty well.
Yeah. Well, I hope that when you go out to practice tonight, everything goes smoothly, and we'll talk to you again next week, bud.
Sounds good. Appreciate you, Steven.